Joining me today is our healthy solution expert with over 20 years experience as a family physician who is impacting lives every single day, Dr. Michelle Meeks. Hey, Doc.
Hey, can you hear me clearly? I was having a little bit of difficulty earlier.
I can hear you. It's just a small echo. I'm not sure.
There's an echo still.
Say something else.
Yes, I mean, it's great to be here to talk about a very important topic that has been in the news and really needs clarification and just educating your listeners, right? Because this is an important topic.
It's an important topic, especially for parents and those of us who are may have be immune compromised or who may be getting older. There's different vaccines that are out there that are offered for us. So, talking about vaccine safety, I feel like we can dispel some of those myths that are out there and get the facts so that people can make an informed decision. So, please like and share the show and invite someone else in on the show that you feel may benefit from the valuable information. So the conversation is necessary today. Do you feel like it's necessary, Doc Michelle, because it could possibly save lives?
Absolutely. I mean, it's been a topic, it's been more prevalent recently, but we've talked about the importance of vaccines, safety, all of that, for many, many years since the first vaccines came out and then with polio vaccine, right? And so we know that over time vaccines work. Those of us of a certain age, know and heard about certain illnesses, right, that were more prevalent when we were younger or before we were born, polio, measles, mumps, those were actual things that kids were getting a lot and adults. And when the vaccines came around, they were very effective in preventing those diseases and making sure that we don't get infected, because many times the disease is worse than the side effects you get from a vaccine, right? And so we've talked about it for so many years, and we want to be sure that because now it's so prevalent in the news, that we are still sharing the facts that vaccines are safe, that they have been studied by the FDA, that we study safety, they study efficacy, and then only when those two things, are found to be true, that it is safe and effective, is it given to the public.
I think a lot of people really paid attention to vaccines when COVID-19 came around. And the vaccine came about, and we know a lot of people said it came about really quickly, but I know probably, and we know for some researchers it was already in the works. So this vaccine comes out, and then there is a lot of different questions about, should we take this vaccine? Is this vaccine safe? And everybody talking about the name, they call it the jab. And it was a personal decision for most people if they wanted to get it or not. I know for some jobs, if they didn't get it, then a lot of people may have lost their jobs or may have been forced to get it so that they can keep their jobs. But I feel like the COVID-19 really opened everybody's eyes to vaccines and how they really work, and to kind of like take it seriously when you think about what it is that you want to put in your body, or what it is that you putting in your body. Because a lot of times we don't really pay attention. We just be like, oh, okay, or be like, no, because we don't really understand why we have to take it.
Right. You said a lot there. For sure, when COVID came around, the topic of vaccines for sure was more discussed, important to folks that hadn't thought about it before, right? For many, right, if you had kids, you were just taking them. You were two, you're going to get your vaccine. Get your regular vaccines. But then when COVID came around, we really wanted to understand, how can we prevent this disease? And so, people probably were hearing terms and words that they hadn't really focused on before in vaccines, like mRNA. It's an mRNA vaccine, right? It's a kind of, cells in our body that make up genetic code and how vaccines are created. But mRNA type vaccines have been created and studied for many, many years. It was just that they took all of that information that they already knew about mRNA vaccines that was already in the works and used that to really create that COVID vaccine, tweak it, study it, all of that, right? And of course, vaccines are first studied, what we talk about in the lab, right? Do we see anything there that is concerning? And then, as you know, back then they had some studies where volunteers could volunteer to get the COVID vaccine as part of the study of safety and efficacy. And what we found is that, right, the vaccine is very safe and efficacious. And because the COVID virus, the coronavirus, is a lot like the flu virus in that it keeps changing, mutating, right? It keeps changing what it does, how it attacks the cells, that we have to have boosters, right? Like we get a flu shot every year because that flu virus changes. The same thing happens with the COVID coronavirus. And that's why they continue to study it and make sure that we have the best vaccine against what's working.
So, why do you think vaccines spark so much controversy than other health topics?
Yeah, that's a big question too, because a couple of things, right? So we know that for years there has been vaccine skeptics, questions around does it cause other diseases, right? Does the MMR vaccine cause autism or any other illnesses? I remember when I was way back in medical school, um, over 20 years ago, that was a topic, right? It wasn't given as much legs, right? We didn't have so much social media and things that can make things drive that maybe are not based in facts, right? And so I think that now, because anyone and everyone can give us information on social media, through different pathways, that everyone is bombarded with different viewpoints. And for some, it's hard to understand, well, what is true, right? And so we have to depend on the medical leaders from we, CDC, FDA, which now we have to look at all of that. But I would say for patients specifically, right, to have conversations, if you are concerned about vaccines, talk to your specific provider. That provider that you've trusted, you sent your kids to, that you go to, that you can get the non-biased factual information if you are concerned about any of the vaccines that you may qualify for or need. So we can dispel any misinformation and give you the facts.
You talked about really quickly, and that was one of the myths that we were going to talk about. A lot of people, you said a lot in that. A lot of people, I've heard them often say that vaccines cause autism, that before they took their child to the doctor, they didn't have any issues. And then once they got vaccinated, then all of a sudden, you know, now their child is being diagnosed with autism. Um, what does this? You may have already said it. What does the science actually say that shows the correlation or no correlation between autism
Right, right,
and vaccines that can kind of put people's mind to rest? Or
right.
because we a lot of times we go on what other people are saying, and we don't really get the facts, and sometimes myths can spread really fast. And but today we want the truth to be even spread even faster or be even louder. So
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, just to let folks know, there's been many studies regarding vaccines of autism, and it's specifically the MMR vaccine, right? So they studied that, and they really, when I was doing a little research to look at this, right, they looked at, the young kids, and from, infancy to two, from, 2 to 3, 3 to 5, right? And if you think about it, what they tried to show was that in kids who had autism, they had more vaccines and specifically the MMR vaccine. Well, we know the MMR vaccine too is given at 1 and at 4. And so if you said, okay, if I look at kids that are 3 to 5, and I'm skewing the numbers because those kids, most of them have probably had, more vaccinations. But is that really linked to autism, right? And so there's been many studies, and actually the people who first came out with that study that started the controversy, they have really understand that the science of that study, it wasn't done correctly, how we do studies, right? To have control groups, to have really looking to see, is the cause of autism multifactorial, or is it related to a vaccine? What we really think is, we think it's a multifactorial illness. It's not really one thing, right, that causes autism. There's no link between vaccines and autism. And that's been on the CDC website from the beginning, right? And they will even have on their website links to the studies, right? And why they have been debunked and not true, right? And so we know that even though they are skeptics out there, the facts and the research shows that there is no link between vaccines, MMR vaccines, and autism. That is more a multifactorial illness, I won't say illness, but disorder that comes from many different things, right? Is it socialization? Is it the foods? What is it that causes that? But no link between vaccines and autism. And we know that, as we've seen recently, that with the lowering less vaccine rates, we're seeing more measles, and measles can be a very sick, serious disease that can lead to death in children, and we've seen that. And so, the disease in this case is worse than any risk of the vaccination. And yeah, but again, people are getting so much information later, ReShell, that it's hard to understand what is true, who is it coming from, what's your source. Whenever I hear something that's just doesn't seem right, I'm like, well, what's the source of that information? Ask questions, right? Read it yourself or talk to your doctor so that they can give you the facts. A healthcare provider that you trust, not the TikTok doctor or the social media person that may not have all the information.
I think you hit on a good point about I think it's hard for us to kind of put it to rest because of social media and because of all the different places where you can get information, and anybody can really put information out there and it may not be true, and people grab a hold to it, gravitate to it, and then they base their decision off of that. So the best place to get that information, like you said, would be to talk to your provider so that they can answer those questions to you, to give you a sense of peace when you're making a decision.
Okay.
Do you feel, I don't know if this is a good question to ask or not, do you feel that the vaccinations should be mandatory like they are? Is it, or if it wasn't, you feel like it would contribute to like the health crisis when it comes to the different diseases that are out there that can be transmitted really easy, especially between those school-aged children?
Right. That's such a question because we depend on what we call this herd immunity, which we talked about with the COVID vaccine too, right? The herd immunity. So all the people that can get the vaccine should get the vaccine so that the people who really can't get the vaccine don't get the disease, right? Maybe someone who's immunocompromised or a little infant who is not yet able to get a vaccine, or a senior person, right, who's immunocompromised. And so that's really the thought around school age vaccinations and vaccines for pediatric vaccines is we want to prevent you from getting the disease, but we also want to help prevent the whole community that you surround yourself with. And it's the same thing we talked about with COVID. When COVID was around, we talked about herd immunity, right? Because there were some people who just couldn't get the vaccine, maybe not able to get it because of access to the vaccine. Maybe they were really immunocompromised and couldn't get the vaccine. But if we can get everyone around that person to get vaccinated, then we decrease the chance of the person who is going to get the disease and really get sick. We prevent them from getting the disease. And so that's part of the reasoning and thinking against the mandatory vaccinations. And there is always, there is, you can be excused from that vaccine based on, a doctor's note or medical conditions and things like that. But yeah, for many, schools, and districts, it's mandatory because that's what we're thinking about. We think about it based on history, right? Things like when vaccines came about, polio, smallpox, all of that we needed to eradicate. And the only way we could eradicate those diseases was by vaccinating as many people as we could so those who were more at risk wouldn't get the disease.
Another myth that I hear people talking about, a fear that they have, is what's inside of these vaccines and is it going to harm me? Maybe not now, but in the long run, because this thinking about the long COVID, we hear that a lot, and people talk about the different symptoms that they have, and they'll say, "Oh, it's probably from the jab." But just what about some of the ingredients that go in the vaccines that people may feel is dangerous to them?
Yeah, yeah. So vaccines do have preservatives in them. The one that was really that had brought about some I don't even say controversy, but questions was there's a mercury sort of containing preservative called thimerosal that was in vaccines previously, but I believe that is no longer in most vaccines that's given now. But yes, so the things that make up vaccines are, for most vaccines, they are not live vaccines. They're sort of pieces of vaccines that allow us to mount an immune response. So you really can't get the disease from the vaccine. They all have preservatives in them. That has been studied as well, right? When we study the vaccine, and as I said before, we're studying safety. We're studying all of that. They're making sure that in the vaccination is nothing that can be harmful. And again, the thing that had been talked about before is this one ingredient that was mercury containing. But my understanding is that is now out of vaccines. And so we're not seeing any issues with any of that. They are safe.
Another myth would be the vaccines contribute to SIDS, and I know for some mothers this could be a frightening thing, especially right after your child has got the vaccine and you're watching them closely just to make sure that nothing is happening to the child.
Yeah, that was also studied, sudden infant death syndrome, right? And vaccines. And with that too, on the CDC website for years, not just recently, but for years, they have said there is no link between SIDS and vaccines. And SIDS in many infants is even before they get vaccines, right? It can be when they're very young, but no definitive, real studies that have been vetted to show that there's any link between those two.
And I think you touched on myth number 4 as it relates to vaccine and their safety and how it's monitored. Because some people may think that, again, I keep bringing up the COVID vaccine and how people say how fast it was produced. I mean, we know it just didn't happen overnight. They feel like, oh, maybe something was skipped in between because it was produced so fast. Just talk about like um, the safety of how they're being monitored.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say as being on this side in healthcare, I know the how rigorous the process and the trials can be before something ever comes to market. And when it comes to market, how it is continuously monitored. For one thing, if a patient was to have a adverse reaction, something happened to them, healthcare workers, doctors, we are sort of mandated to report those vaccine adverse events, right? And so that goes into, there's a whole database forms that we fill out to say this happened. And so what happens is, as healthcare workers are seeing anything, that gets reported, and then they look for trends, right? So ongoing, even not even vaccines, any medications, anything like that, we report that, and so that's how we get more information, even as people are continuing to get their vaccines. If there are adverse events, that is monitored and reported, and continuously monitored, and even outside of what we in the healthcare field are seeing, the researchers, the chemists, the scientists, they're continuously in the lab looking at these vaccines and making sure that when it's vaccinated into a cell, do we see anything happening to that cell under the microscope? That's what happens on an ongoing basis. We don't really talk about that. It's not, fun to talk about, but that's ongoing stuff that happens from scientists in a lab and us, the healthcare workers out in the field.
What do you think are some red flags that when a parent should call a doctor after their child has been vaccinated?
Yeah. So when you get a vaccine, there's a normal response that sometimes happens, right? We call it mild reactions to getting a vaccine. That's usually things like, right, you get sore, you might get a low grade temperature, you might get a temp of 99 or 100, right? Um, if you're getting things more serious, like you're breaking out in a full body rash, or you are having a high fever over 100.4, if you are more irritable or unable to keep down any oral food, things like that, we want to know about that. But it is not uncommon to have a mild reaction to vaccinations, right? I've had patients who, some of them will tell me they felt so horrible after a vaccine, and then some have no problems after a vaccine, right? It's very, it's everyone reacts to vaccines differently, but a normal response is sort of expected, but it's those high fevers and things like that that we worry about.
If you had like 30 seconds to reassure a parent that was hesitant about getting their child a vaccine, like what would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say get the right information. If you have questions, talk to your doctor that you trust, right? Talk to your doctor that you trust that can give you the information to alleviate your fears. And in any decision in the medical field, we want you to have all the information needed to make the best decision for you and your family, right? And don't depend on just things we might hear external on, social media or through pundits and things like that. Speak to the person you trust, that you have entrusted your healthcare to get the right information.
Awesome. Were there any other myths that I missed out on that you may want to talk about?
I think we touched on most of those. I did want to say too, right? So there are certain, because I know we talk a lot about cancer on your show, that for patients who have cancer, it's important, right, to be vaccinated as well. But you want to be sure that you're vaccinated. A couple of things. You can't get vaccines when you are on chemo or radiation, right? And as we talked about before, Vaccines take about 2 weeks to mount the response, especially with the flu shot. So as flu season is coming about, right, make sure you get your flu shot. Make sure you get those, talk to your provider to make sure that you're getting those vaccines that you need to stay healthy through your cancer so that you don't get something else that makes treating your cancer even more difficult.
Awesome. And what would be one thing you would want to tell the listeners to remember about vaccines after tonight's show?
Yes. So remember a couple of things that vaccines are important to prevent very serious diseases. And that thing we talked about with herd immunity is so important. So some people are like, I'm fine, I don't need it, right? I don't need these vaccines. My kids are healthy, they don't need it. But we're thinking not only about your child, but we're also thinking about all the children around them, and to understand that that's important, as well as understanding that the vaccines have been studied very well, and there's no credible studies to show that there's a link to autism, SIDS, anything like that. And that what we know is many times the disease is worse than the vaccine.
Awesome. Dr. Michelle, thank you so much for always giving us the facts and helping us to get the information to make an informed decision. And tonight we talked about vaccines and the safety. We gave you some facts and some myths that you can walk away with the truth. So thank you so much. I always appreciate you coming on every month.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Enjoy your day. You guys, don't forget that Warriors Talk annual event is coming up on October the 18th. And you are invited. Make sure you invite survivors and supporters that can come out and celebrate with those authors that are going to be featured for When Warriors Talk Faith Emerges. Again, this is Saturday, October the 18th, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the Crystal Sky Banquet. And it is going to be an afternoon of inspiration, reflection, and celebration. This is our ninth year, and I'm so excited about that. There's so many things that Warriors Talk has done building up to this ninth year. So many people have taken this ride with us, and I'm just so excited that we are going to be celebrating some of those listeners. And you know, Warriors Talk is always looking for individuals to come out and share their journey. If you are a cancer survivor, or if you're just an individual who has an inspirational story, then Warriors Talk want you to come out and share with others to give them hope, to give them some inspiration that they too also can make it. And don't forget about my sponsor, Pastor Michael Richardson with the Emmanuel Church of God in Christ, who has been sponsoring Warriors Talk Show from the beginning since we started. And I'm so excited about that and what God has in store for us. Also, my other sponsor is Gloria Dotson with Mary Kay, and she's catering to all of your beauty needs from head to toe. She's also one of those sponsors who have been with Warriors Talk from the beginning. So I'm so excited about that as well. Don't forget about my new book that I have out, you guys. I have a new book out, Take Charge of Cancer. It's a guided journal for healing and faith and empowerment. If you are a cancer survivor, then this book is for you. If you are in the battle, actively in treatment, this book is for you as well. As this cancer is a diagnosis that changes everything, but it does not have to define who you are. If you know someone who is going through a cancer journey and you want to gift them with this book, this journal, then do so. This book is the partner book with Take Charge of Cancer, and you can read this book first and then go right into the journal and document your journey. I always tell everybody to please document your journey, write down everything, take pictures, make sure that you get all the facts down because you never know. You never know when you may want to write a book or do anything with that. I'm so excited about the new book that's launching at the 9th annual Survivor Celebration, a reflection gala this year, you guys, again on October the 29th, when Warriors Talk Faith Emerges. I have 4 amazing authors, number 5, including myself, that's going to be sharing our stories of how we let go and let God transform our journeys. I have Dawn, I have Vivica, I have Tanya, and then there's going to be Brenda. These are some phenomenal first-time authors sharing their stories of faith and how they just surrender to God and let Him do what He needed to do in order for their faith to emerge. So come out to the gala and make sure you purchase your book and support the authors, support the survivors that are going to be there, as well as the warrior in battle. You know, every year we give our survivors an award. They get to enjoy a delicious brunch, and we also celebrate them with a swag bag. And someone who's in battle will walk away financially. Last year, we gave our warrior in battle $1,000, you guys, and I don't get any grants. Warriors Talk do not get any grants. I'm gonna repeat that. We do not. All of our donations come from individuals like yourself who, out of the kindness of their hearts, just decide to support the mission and the vision that we have, which is to empower individuals who are going through this journey and to help bridge the gap financially with those who are currently in battle. So I'm asking that you come out. You can go to warriorstalk.org to get your ticket. You can also scan this QR code that is on the flyer, and you can get your ticket that way. Let me say, you have to register. You must register, right? I need you to register. Go out, register for the event, and make sure that you bring a friend with you. Don't come by yourself. Bring a friend with you. The tickets are only $65 right now. They're $55 until the 15th. So you have until the 15th at 11:59 that night to get your ticket for the early bird special. And then after that, the tickets will be $65. Come out, celebrate with Warriors Talk, and celebrate with the survivors who have fought this fight and who are on the other side of treatment. And let me just say, cancer does not stop just because you're out of treatment, right? It's not over because you're out of treatment. It is just beginning. That's when survivorship begins, is when you are done with treatment. And these survivors are ready to celebrate. They have been through some rigorous treatment. Cancer plays a terrible role on your body. And sometimes it takes a lot to get back to yourself or your new normal, as we say. And so it's good to celebrate. And the one thing I wanted to do when I was done with treatment is I wanted to celebrate. And I don't want to celebrate by myself. So again, come out and celebrate. We are in year number 9, and we're going to celebrate these survivors. And I am encouraging you to come out. We are looking for vendors. We are looking for sponsors. You can be a sponsor of the event. You can sponsor a survivor to come to the event for $65, or you could be a vendor for $65 and share your information with individuals. I am looking for individuals to come out and join us. So join me next Monday right here on Intellectual Radio. I will leave you with these words of wisdom. We perish for the lack of knowledge. Get the facts to make an informed decision. So join me next Monday at 6 p.m. right here on Intellectual Radio. As always, Warriors Talk is changing lives, one warrior at a time.
Thank you for listening to this week's edition of Warriors Talk with Lady ReShell. To get more information on Warriors Talk, follow at Warriors Talk, the number 1, on all social media outlets, and Warriors Talk with Lady ReShell on YouTube. Listen next week and every Monday evening at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time to Warriors Talk with Lady ReShell, where we encourage, educate, and empower you into action.